In this video, you'll see me finishing the carving of this COLLAGRAPH of a horse, print some beautiful backgrounds with a Gelli plate, and then print on them and work out the pieces. Hello Gelli and non-Gelli print fans. Today I want to finish and print the COLLAGRAPH of a horse that I started in part 1. Here's the link if you haven't seen it. First, I'll finish the carving of the Tetra-Pak material that I bought by the meter. All the products are in the description below. You can also use a milk carton and cut it open if you don't mind the creases you have with it. Here I am carving basically with an etching tool. I am creating some lines that are supposed to indicate areas of grasses. I decided I am not going to have the grass everywhere, but only in some selected areas where the photo had some shadows. This special way of cross-hatching is a technique I saw Sergio Toppi use, an Italian genius of a comic drawing artist. He was not known widely back then, that was in the 70s, and now people are discovering him again, and there are quite a few wonderful books out that show almost all his work. Sadly, that master is not with us anymore, but check out his work if you don't know him, he is gorgeous. If you want to go straight to the backgrounds that I make with the Gelli plate, skip forward to 3 minutes 0 seconds. If you want to see the printing, go to 6:10, and the working out of the prints starts at 13:17. In hindsight, I have to say that all these detailed small pieces of the aluminum that I left were not such a good decision. Some of them will come up when I go crisscross with the printing ink, so I am gluing down some of these that have already raised. Here I am hatching all the areas that are supposed to be a mid-tone later. The clouds I am hatching the same way, but only in some areas. This, for my liking, is a finished COLLAGRAPH, and before I start printing, I will create some nice backgrounds on the Gelli plate. Preparing some coffee for the spray bottle. I want to spray on water to crack the paint surface on the Gelli plate and hope that coffee water instead of pure water will add some brown interest to the structure. Testing the coffee on some scrap paper. It is good if you have an adjustable nozzle. Not you, the water spray bottle. That way you can press the trigger just the slightest bit and get some big random drops and some smaller ones if you press harder. I want to keep the background light as to not disturb the main motif too much. I am starting with some sand color by Schminky, which is really a beige, and a Naples yellow red light by Amsterdam, a kind of a skin tone. Rolling them out evenly so that they merge into each other. Spraying on the coffee, and almost immediately you can see that the paint reacts to it. This method, not with coffee but water, I have seen with Sally Hurst, a wonderful printing artist, and of course the Count of Printing Mark Yates in his recent video. Today I'm printing on Canson mixed media paper that has 200 GSM. I'd recommend to use an even higher grammature if you want to paint on it later. What's left on the plate I put aside to dry for later. And this print is still wet in some areas, so I am removing a bit of color with the tissue, and the droplets are visible even better. I have to admit that the coffee doesn't have a great effect on this. But the supple structures are really nice, just what I wanted. The leftovers on the plate have now dried, and I'm picking them up with a light gray color. Just adding some last droplets of coffee, still hopping. Nice light background number 2. Again, trying the Sally Hurst method. For this, I am diluting the paint with water before I put it on the Gelli plate. Painting on the watery mix with a brush, and you can see what interesting shapes the paint creates. Picking the plate up and letting it run a bit. Normally, it would be best to let it dry for a while now, but I'm too excited. I pick it up too early and get a totally different effect, more like decalcomania, which I have done a lot in my recent videos. But I like it, the way the two colors mixed and the dynamic structures I get. Now for the printing. I will not go via the Gelli plate, but print directly from the COLLAGRAPH. And as the inking up of the COLLAGRAPH takes so long, I cannot do it with acrylics as they dry too fast. You can, of course, use acrylics if you print with a Gelli plate, but that's not my intention here. So I am using the Aqua Intaglio etching ink, the new lamp black, which is better and darker than the Aqua black I've used before. I take it out of its can with a spatula to spread it out on a glass plate. I then spread it out over the whole COLLAGRAPH piece, letting it sink in the lower areas. You should vary the direction you're going in for every piece of the image to make sure there are no empty gaps in the lower parts. This is a stump that you can make of some old piece of linen or cotton. Just roll it and fix it with a piece of masking tape around it. With it, you can push the paint further into the lower parts. Good news for all of you who dislike this long and messy process. In this video, I find out that you don't actually have to do it like this. You'll see if you stay tuned. So now that your plate is a bloody black mess, you're supposed to take off the ink again from the upper areas. You can do this with little pieces of scrap paper, as I do here, or newsprint paper, but I'll also show you a quicker method later. This is a piece of scrim. You hold it so that you have a flat surface for wiping the plate, so as not to take any color out of the creases. It is good for this purpose because it's practically plastic and therefore acts like 100 mini spatulas and doesn't suck up any paint. You can use it over and over again. Yet again, good news, you don't have to do this. But this is what the print pros do, so I want to practice that for more sophisticated prints. The paper you should always get damp before you print. I spray it with a water bottle and then rub the moisture in and at the same time get rid of any bigger lakes of water. And I do that on both sides. And now I'm printing. Placing the damp paper on top of the plate and fixing it to the sides as to not move it while I'm rubbing with my silver spoon here. I do have this new press, but I'm not going to try it today, and there are a lot of people who don't have a press, so I'm printing the simple way. Well, this first print is interesting. It picked up the ink quite well, but you can see I didn't clean the upper surfaces enough, so this is all too dark and messy. Being unhappy with the print now, you will see that it later will turn out to be my favorite after I've painted on it. Now I will dampen one of the prepared backgrounds. It's not easy though, because some areas are too sealed with acrylic paint. I rub in the water with my glove so that I don't pick up any moisture. I'm really pushing it in. I have inked up the plate again, cleaned the surface better, but I don't want to bore you to death, so I didn't film it. Didn't fix it here, but took care to hold it in place on the other side that I'm not working on. Silver spoon doing its job again. And it's a failure again. The background is too noisy for this detailed image, but I wanted to show you the failures too. So, here's little me inventing new and easier techniques. This time I'm rubbing in the ink directly and cleaning not with the scrap paper but with a moist baby wipe, which is about 100 times faster. You just have to be a little careful not to rub any moisture into the creases. And this time I failed again, because the paper had shifted a little. But this is also a negative example to show you. Maybe I should practice what I preach. Stay with me, it gets better, I promise. Now what I do here is really good, I think. For inking up just in certain areas, I am using a glue brush, which is not sucking up paint, and it seems to work well. I decide that I want to try only the horse for this, and leave most of the background out for now. Maybe a little for the clouds. Now I only have to get the rims clear of ink, and that also works well with the baby wipe. I'm going over some parts of the horse's features by wrapping the baby wipe around the index finger only. You can also use cotton swabs for these delicate areas. Dampening the paper again. And this time I won't forget to use the masking tape. And voila! A print that looks okay to me, at last. Notice I didn't ink up most of the background, but it still shows as it still had some ink on it. I actually find it very interesting that some of the horse's shadows have a white rim. And the last print for today will go on this background. I inked up the plate the same way as before, which really saves a lot of time. And I like this one too. I'll show you now, quite sped up, how I worked out the first print more, with a black pencil only. I don't want to do too much. As usual, I don't want to overwork it and thereby lose the print feel. But I don't have a problem at all with this being not a pure print, but a worked out one. Luckily, I don't have anybody around to tell me what my art should be made like. Using a marker here just for the eyes to make them a little darker still. As I have done with the grass, I only add a little bit of pencil to the lower sides, specifically the lower ends of the hedge stripes. A lot of it I want to leave diffused and broken. This is a very good example for explaining that I always say never be perfect. All of the prints of this session are highly unperfect, and that's exactly why I love them. Actually, there is something that I could do better. Something went wrong with the position of the eyes here. Maybe a little more perfection would be good. And this is a slideshow of what I did with the second print. Just adding light shadows to the light brown structure in the back, and a few more black outlines to the horse. and to some of the background elements. And that's all I want to do here. The first print was so dark that I needed to employ some acrylics for the lawn. And for the sky, I used that Liquitex Gold Effect paint that I love so much. I hope you can see the effect well. It's like a real dirty gold now. Some green pencil also to distinguish the lawn pieces from the horse's shadows. I even made another print with golden open paint because it stays wet for a long time. I used a little more water on the paper, and that's what produced an almost watercolor-like look, just as a test. So how did you like this? I'm sorry I still have not used my etching press, but that will come soon. I hope these were inspiring for you to try something similar, and keep in mind that you don't necessarily need all the expensive pro stuff. Mostly always there is a simpler alternative. See you next week. Bye.